Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the Housing and Economic Development Committee meeting today, June 23rd. We will begin the meeting with the roll call, posting of the agenda, and the flag salute.
Member Basua.
Here.
Member Flynn.
Present.
Chair Madrigal.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum, and the agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall kiosk on Tuesday, June 16th.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor, would you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Okay, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we have item B, public comments on items not on the agenda. And it looks like we have no public comments today.
Correct.
All right, with that, we will move over to item C, the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the approval of minutes for the May 26th meeting.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Call for a vote.
Member Basua.
Aye.
Member Flynn.
Aye.
Chair Madrigal.
Aye.
The motion carries 3-0.
Thank you. Now moving over to item D. It's the Community Development Department, and it is for the Oxnard Downtown Management District. It's for the city appointee to the ODMD board. And with that, actually, I'll probably abstain from the whole aspect of item 1 since it involves me. So, Mayor, can you lead the meeting?
Sure, thank you. This is a report, item 1, under the Community Development Department. And the recommendation is that the Housing and Economic Development Committee provide a recommendation to the City Council to 1, approve the mayor's appointment of city manager as designee as the city's representative on the ODMD, Oxnard Downtown Management District. 2, approve a Fourth Amendment Agreement number 419207-CD with the Oxnard Downtown Management District Incorporated to extend services to December 31st, 2020. And 3, adopt a resolution ordering the levy and collection of assessments within the Oxnard Downtown Management District. And we'll go to Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and also the members of the committee. Jeff Lambert, Community Development Director, and as the mayor and committee chair mentioned, this is a 3-item topic tonight. There are 3 things we're asking the committee to consider recommending to the full council. 1 is the changing the city's representative on the Downtown Oxnard Management District Board, or ODMD. 2nd is the extension of the agreement between the city and the ODMD. And 3rd is the annual levy of taxes assessments for the ODMD's budget. Just a little bit of background, the ODMD was created by the city in 2001 and also by a vote of the property owners within the downtown district. It is a property-based business improvement district. That really is an opportunity for the property owners within a designated area to tax themselves, really, to create a funding source to reinvest in their community, usually for things that are related to safe and clean and also marketing the downtown. And this is something that's pretty common around the state of California and across the country. The ODMD has been renewed 4 times. It's authorized to continue until July of 2024. And then most recently, Councilmember Oscar Madrigal has been the city's ODMD representative or director on the ODMD board. Just a little bit more background, the city has had an agreement with ODMD since July of 2006. It did expire at the end of last year. We didn't renew it as we should have last year. So the goal tonight is to put it back in place for the balance of this calendar year. Also, the city on an annual basis adopts a resolution to approve the levy and the collection of assessments. We collect the money on behalf of the district and then forward it to the district under this agreement. So the agreement's a critical part of the district's future. The board representative, as mentioned, Mr. Madrigal has been on the board. When school was normally in session, it was a challenge for Mr. Madrigal to get to all the ODMD board meetings based on his work schedule and other commitments. In addition, the city's PBID consultant, Marco Lamandri, who we think is joining us for this meeting, he's on, has recommended that best practice around the region is to have PBID representatives of cities be staff members as opposed to city council members. And then we also, based on that, want to recommend tonight that the committee ask the council to support changing the city's representative from Mr. Madrigal to the city manager or his designee. The second item on the agenda is the agreement. The purpose of this agreement is to establish the contractual relationship between the city and ODMD, and it really outlines what each party their responsibilities are. This agreement, as I mentioned, was approved back in 2006, and it hasn't been significantly updated since then. And we believe, based on our discussions with Mr. Lamandri, who's on the phone, and I'll ask him to say a few words in a minute, that this agreement needs to be upgraded to more of a best practice current standards. But generally, the agreement calls for the administration of the program of the management district, sets forth the length of the term of the agreement, and also talks about how the district should spend its money based on the management plan on reporting responsibilities of the district to its board and the community. The third is again, with the district, the city's responsibility is to collect those taxes and provide them to the district so they have a funding source. That's really our responsibility. And as I mentioned earlier, our agreement has not been significantly updated since it was first adopted in 2006. The recommendation is to extend this agreement through to the end of this year, December 31st, 2020. And then between now and then, staff would work with the ODMD board under the advice of our PBID consultant, Mr. Lamandri, to update the agreement based on current standards, making sure that we adhere to the Brown Act, which is not currently articulated in the agreement, and have a clearer definition of roles and responsibilities going forward. Then the last item for the council tonight is the annual assessment and the collection of assessments. This is an important way of the city collecting on behalf of the district, and we're asking council to pass the resolution, or the committee to recommend that council pass the resolution to set those assessments on an annual basis. A little bit on the assessments. They provide for the funding to do what the ODMD does, which is provide streets, sidewalks, alleys, and parking lot cleaning and other services in the community. They provide some public safety additions, promotions and marketing of downtown through events and other means, expansion of the physical amenities throughout the downtown, and other improvements that are consistent with the agreement and the district's formation. Just from the financial perspective, the proposed assessment is $502,357. This reflects no rate increase over the previous fiscal year. The bulk of that fund is paid for by private owners, although the city has a significant portion of those funds based on property we own within the district. The amount will be levied and collected for each fiscal year and may be increased, but not to exceed 2% per year. But as noted, we're not proposing an increase in this current proposal. Financial impact of the decisions before the committee and ultimately the city council. The city will be responsible for submitting the annual assessments. That's something we've been doing since formation in 2006. The successor agency still owns some property in the district, so the successor agency has a portion to pay, and that's already included in the annual recognized obligation and payment schedule. And then the city non-successor agency ownership has the larger portion of the city's responsibility, and that's $146,000 and change. These funds are available in the proposed 2021 city's fiscal year budget. So the recommendation before the committee today is to recommend that the full city council approve the mayor's appointment of the city manager or his designee to the ODMD board, approve a fourth amendment to the agreement to expire on December 31st, 2020, and adopt a resolution ordering the levy and collection of assessments. I would like to ask Marco Lamandri to talk a couple things to just augment the presentation. One is what would be the things that we would anticipate seeing in the updated agreement based on best practices? And two, talk a little bit about the structure of the ODMD that we see going forward through our negotiations that we intend to have over the summer and fall with the ODMD board. And I'll turn it over to Marco. I think he's on the line. Marco?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I am on the line. And I've been working with the city manager, and as you recall, I gave the presentation to the full city council in December, showing a lot of before and afters as what has occurred in San Diego's Little Italy. And that it's been an ongoing work in progress. The issues that I've raised with the city manager and city manager staff is that the relationship, when you adopted the resolution of formation on the latest version of the PBID, it lays out a series of services that property owners are supposed to be getting. The overwhelming majority of that is what they would call clean and safe services, clean, safe, and beautification. There's another one that has to do with environmental improvement, as well as marketing, and then administration. And it seems as though that in light of the critical nature that not only downtown Oxnard is in, but really people all throughout the country, it seems as though the board needs to be a little bit more aggressive in trying to bring people back to downtown Oxnard. We know from the reading that there's going to be a very, very large wave of bankruptcies coming forward, not necessarily in California, but nationwide, because of the dramatic negative impact that COVID has occurred. So the board, I think, has to be moving on all cylinders in order to try to make sure the businesses that have been hit hard are able to come back, that the theaters, once they open, are able to start filling up the seats as much as possible, and that the totality of the impact of not only COVID, but the recent demonstrations that occurred in early June do not set a negative tone for downtown. And I would tell you that I think that there needs to be a lot more results orientation towards the board of directors. I think there's some really good people on the board, but I think we're in a different world right now. And I think that over the last 15 years, in studying the progress of the board, which is the entity that the city has a contract with, the board needs to, I think, look at, should we be doing things the same way we did 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or are we really in a different situation? I mentioned at the presentation in December that I think that you have a tremendous amount of assets in downtown Oxnard. And I think that it's time that those assets are really promoted. Your land is inexpensive. You have a train station. You have a great microclimate. You have some wonderful architecture. You also have a very pro-PBID city council, mayor, and city staff. And it seems as though that we're looking at how do we try to improve the performance of the board, make them far more structured in terms of, just as you have a good working committee system, as well as a board of directors, look at the option of becoming a public benefit corporation, bringing in new blood into the board. And I think that was some of the reasons why staff is recommending that we look at a 6-month extension of the current contract. And then if it is determined that there be a new corporation set up, which would include many, if not all, of the current board members, that we try to create this rejuvenated management corporation that would then be able to attract capital, attract development, attract housing, and then move forward. So that's kind of like the, at least my perception, Jeff and Ashley and the city council members, on I think where we are today.
Thank you, Marco. And just before we conclude, I just wanted to make a note. We had a change in the account number in our fiscal impact analysis for the general fund portion of the PBID funding. We have to correct that account number. The correct number should be 01-4502-804-8528. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation, and we're happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. I do have one speaker, and that is Gary Bloom. And I'd like for him to speak first, and then we'll go to committee member comments and questions.
Hey, Gary, it's Michelle at the Housing and Economic Development Committee meeting.
Yes, Michelle.
Hi. You've got 3 minutes to speak on item D1, and the time will start when you begin. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, my name is Gary Blum. I'm a member of the downtown Oxnard Downtowners, which is sort of a parallel group that works with the PBID. I just wanted to say that I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and the concept of going to a 501c3 could really be beneficial. So I applaud that, the city's and their consultant's recommendation. Also, I do hope that there can be some new visioning of what can happen in downtown and what needs to happen. I agree with the consultant's recommendations that maybe it can't be business as usual now, especially with what's going to happen to the economy. So I just wanted to speak in support of where the staff's going, and hope that the council committee and next week the council green light this and hopefully keep forward movement for downtown Oxnard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Madam City Clerk, are there any additional speakers?
No, we don't have any others.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to go now to Committee Member Basua.
Thank you. It was a great presentation, and I don't have any questions.
Wow, that's great. I would just like to ask Committee Member Madrigal if he would like to make any comments or on any questions other than maybe the appointment, because he's traditionally then been that city representative. Committee Member Madrigal?
No questions, concerns. Great presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I have some very comments that I have been thinking about for a long time, and I have met the city's consultant, Marco, and I very much appreciate his presentation because I think it really gets to the core of what the new direction. And I'll just say that my viewpoint is I want to start and say I remember, when I was first elected to the city council in 2004, and I remember, then assuming office in 2005. And again, this is a long time ago. This is 15 years ago, and I remember this feeling of this renaissance of the downtown, and that had a lot to do with the actions of my predecessors and eventually colleagues on the council, where they created the downtown theater district and Centennial Plaza. And while I might not care maybe for the architecture of the Centennial Plaza, and maybe there's some other aspects of it, I mean, overall, I mean, it really was offered the possibility of just mushrooming and just instigating and producing this renaissance. And I remember then shortly after this whole thing was established, we then faced the recession in 2008, and everything went into the toilet. There's no other way to talk about it, and we're probably facing somewhat of a very similar situation now. I hope it's not as bad as the Great Recession. There are some say it will be worse, and some say it's the same. And but the history, and then I kind of take a look at the city council and the administration, so city government's role in downtown, and then I looked at the board, the ODMD. And one of the things that I've seen that is that has changed is under Mr. Nguyen and Mr. Lambert, and then also with Marco as a consultant. I see a completely different course and a different possibility for the downtown. And there's something in me right now that wants to say that even in the trough and when economic conditions are the worst, this maybe is the time to really get started, because as Marco alluded to, the downtown properties are very inexpensive, and it offers a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs. So I first want to say, I think that the city government's response to the downtown is changing. It's evolving over time. And I think that has to do with, again, Committee Member Madrigal has been able to offer a lot of very strong support. And together with him and with Jeff Lambert and Mr. Nguyen, we have a new dynamic. I mean, we're trying to attract residential units downtown, And I would like for Marco in a second to comment on that, but I've always seen that as an integral component of the success of downtown that we have to, it's literally as simple as importing people that have disposable income that are going to, come downstairs from their loft unit or whatever it's going to be, and they're going to get a coffee downstairs, or they're going to go to the restaurant next door, or their friends are going to come to start visiting them. And so I know that Marco's worked extensively with Little Italy in San Diego. I love Little Italy. I mean, it's a remarkable place. But I have concerns about the ODMD. And the concerns are, I don't know if it's ever really been made clear to them what is the ODMD role beyond being as Marco said, kind of a clean and safe kind of driven organization. I don't think that role, this is my perspective as just one member of this committee and council who was elected to the council right after the theater was established, is I don't think that the executive director necessarily has been given a very specific task to say, you know what, it doesn't take much to operate a bunch of contracts on how to keep the downtown safe and clean. There's a security contract, there's a cleaning contract. Your job, Mr. Executive Director, is to do this. And then that board becomes a team with that executive director to go out and do exactly what Marco said. I'm just going to say from my observation, I don't think that's ever happened. And I'm not necessarily faulting the executive director or the board. I'm just saying I just have not seen that happen. And so I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to, when this comes to the full city council and doing what the recommended actions are, that we state as a city government our intention, whether the vehicle is a 401c3 or whatever the vehicle is, we need to be very precise with what our expectations are of that ODMD and its executive director, because we are a big component of the funding for the ODMD. We need to make it very clear. And I'm going to just say, and again, even as mayor, I don't think collectively that has been done. So I wanted to just say that to my distinguished colleagues on the committee and to Mr. Nguyen who's listening, but also even ask Marco about the success of Little Italy and or the future of attracting new residents downtown as a central and grid. Marco, if you want to disagree, or if you're inclined to disagree, please do so. But I've just seen that as an integral component of what the downtown needs to really start taking it where we want it to go.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't agree more. Just a few comments on your comments. First, I think that you as city council members and as the mayor should have very high expectations for the ODMD because of the amount of money that you're putting into it. You have to look at what is the return on investment. Is there new development occurring? Are property values going up? Are rents, are new businesses coming in? Are rents making it worth people's while to invest in downtown? I don't think a lot of that has occurred. And I think that what I see the management corporation as, and it must be, is a cheerleader for downtown. So if I was going to look at investing in Oxnard, the first thing I'd say is, well, who's running downtown? What's going on? Well, there's city staff, which plays one role, which is to process development and make sure that all the entitlements are in place. But the other one is who creates the character in downtown that drives people to it. We know that the collection has a critical mass of retail. It has residential. It's a good environment as malls go, but it's not a downtown. Your downtown has tremendous history. It has the Central Park, which is tremendous. And I think it's the job of the management corporation to create what I would call dynamic density. And you have that density right now. We went through a huge upsurge of residential development all throughout Southern California and even in the Bay Area over the last 10 years since the last recession. Very little of that occurred in downtown Oxnard. And it makes me wonder, like, what happened? Again, you've got so many different assets that exist in downtown. And I think that one thing the executive director needs to do, and not just only able, but any executive director needs to do, is say, what are the best practices? What are other people doing in other cities? How are they running events? Or are they even doing events? Are they developing public spaces? How are they attracting new developers to come into downtown? Because your downtown, like any other downtown in the United States, will be resuscitated and reinvented by residential. And not just affordable housing, which is important, but market rate residential. And I think that it's so important that we understand that you guys have this train station that links you directly to Union Station and other parts from Union Station. Once the traffic gets back to 90 to 100%, we know that the 101 is really a pain to deal with. But you have this train station, and I could see people wanting to live in Oxnard in great affordable units, taking the train to downtown LA or other parts, and understanding that that's the way people are going to survive in the future. But the residential component and market rate, high density residential component is critical for the turning around of downtown Oxnard.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair and committee member Basua, I know maybe perhaps like you, and one of the things that Marco just said that just kind of, a light bulb went off. I've spent off and on more time than maybe at any other time in my life in the arts district in downtown LA and also in East LA. I have seen that renaissance there. I just don't know what to say about it other than the fact that I think LA and the city of LA is experiencing the largest economic or residential economic expansion and just expansion period since the 1920s and 30s. So we're seeing like no other time in the last 100 years, Los Angeles is just a miracle. That is what Marco just pinpointed. I mean, some of those loft apartments in some of these places now are obviously, it's like San Francisco or whatever. They're $1 million units. They're $800,000 units. And I see the downtown primarily, I think the mission and what our focus should be is about attracting young professionals, a dynamic, inclusive group of young professionals of every walk of life, and that they will be this younger generation, this younger group of people. They will ignite us. They're light years ahead of us already, and I'm sorry to say that to Committee Member Basua and Committee Member Madrigal, who are far younger than I am, but just these younger people that are in their 20s right now. They're on fire. They're absolutely on fire. They're unstoppable. And I think as the new focus, it should be those kids, those young 20-something kids that can't afford to pay $800,000 in downtown LA. Guess what? We got a $350,000 condo in Oxnard, and like Marco said, you walk to the train station, you go to that great bakery that's in the on the way to the train station at the Woolworths building, and maybe the Woolworths building again becomes some dynamic restaurant. Those younger people are going to ignite this downtown. And the last statement is that when I was one of those individuals on the council that approved the Press Courier lofts, that is a senior development, and we need more senior housing, and we know we need more affordable housing. But let's not make any mistake about the fact we need market rate units. We need kids with disposable income, and that's all I got to say, Mr. Chair and Committee Member Basua. It should be focused on these young people, and we need to get them in our downtown. And by the way, we have a lot of those people right in Oxnard, California. We need to get those young people into our downtown, and that's where I see this going. But we need to be much clearer of what our expectations are of the ODMD or anything that replaces it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Madam City Clerk, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but it looks like Marco and your other image are frozen. Maybe if everyone wants to try logging out and logging back in again.
Hello, okay, I'm sorry, I had a little connectivity problem. I apologize.
Still working for the rest of us.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I don't know if there are any further comments by the city manager. Let me defer to the city manager, please. Mr. Nguyen?
Oh, no, I was just commenting that the sound and audio and video was working. Thank you.
Oh, yes. I just wanted now that, your things have changed in the downtown since you arrived as city manager and certainly since Mr. Lambert arrived. And I just would like your comments on either what I've said or anybody else that has presented here today.
I think you've had a great conversation at the committee, and obviously I support the staff's presentation. Frankly, I don't think it's changed enough in the last 2 years, and so there's always this frustration about how slow some of these things take. But we also have to take the right initial steps to be on the right path. Otherwise, we end up back in a cul-de-sac, which we don't want to do.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. Any further comments by sorry, still having, okay. Oh God, I have two of them.
We can hear you now.
So, can everyone hear me?
Yes. Do you hear us?
Sorry about that. Mr. Nguyen, can you hear me? Madam City Clerk?
We hear you. Do you hear us? Oh my goodness.
Sorry. Hello?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I've had some connectivity issues here. Are there any further comments, members of the committee, before we vote on this item? With no further comments, Committee Member Basua, would you like to make a motion?
Yes. Move the recommended action.
And I'll second.
Member Basua?
Aye.
Member Flynn?
Aye.
The motion carries 2 to 0 to 1.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Marco. I know. Thank you very much. And now I'll defer back to the chair of the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the second report item, which is from the Housing Department, and it's an overview of the Oxnard Housing Authority. And they'll be presented by the housing team.
Good afternoon, council members of the Housing and Economic Development Committee. Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. We at the Housing Department and the staff that's here to help me present the item are pretty excited about launching an initiative that's going to take us over the next 12 months, year, to plan and then get together. We're extremely grateful for the desire of the council to be engaged in this effort with us. And we are going to be engaging not only with the Housing and Economic Development Committee, but also various other stakeholders, including our participants, our tenants, our clients, our landlords, tenant associations, and many others as we pursue a plan for improvement of the Oxnard Housing Authority. which is what we're going to launch today. But today, we hope to offer an introduction to what is the Housing Authority, only an effort to set a baseline condition of who we are, what we do, and then come back over the period of the next 12 months to undertake an improvement effort. First, the Housing Department, the Oxnard Housing Department, is actually a greater team than just the Oxnard Housing Authority. Admittedly, the Housing Authority being the largest of its teams, but it is not the complete department. And the complete department also includes grants management that runs and offers assistance in operating all of the grants that we receive from a different part of HUD, Community Planning and Development, including CDBG, Home, and ESG. It also includes the Affordable Housing Development Team that offers an ability to help us build new affordable housing opportunities in the city, fair housing, rent stabilization, homeless services, and administration. These things are efforts that we need to undertake together. So I say that because as we look to improve the Housing Authority, we need to do it in a way where we don't ignore the balance of the team, because they add value to the Oxnard Housing Authority, and so does the Housing Authority add value to the city and the Housing Department. First, by way of introduction, the housing authorities are authorized and created by state law, codified in the California Housing Authorities Law under Section 34-200 of the Health and Safety Code. But the vast majority of housing authorities in the country, and similar to the Oxnard Housing Authority, are public housing authorities and operate programs that are funded by HUD and the Public and Indian Housing Division of HUD. And those funding sources bring forth all of the regulations that we're going to discuss today and that we're going to discuss over the course of the next 12 months. But also the state law does empower the housing authority to undertake other initiatives that we could take on that could coordinate and partner with the regulations set forth by HUD and the funding sources set forth by HUD. In fact, there are some initiatives that play well together in terms of state law and federal regulations. The Housing Authority of Oxnard operates two primary programs similar to every other housing authority in the country, and it does so with a total of 50 employees. And the programs that it offers are supported by administration and finance, and that administration and finance unit is overseen by Rhonda Hodge. The Housing Authority's primary programs include the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which most of us know as Section 8, is a tenant-based rental assistance program, and also the Public Housing Program, which offers direct affordable housing in publicly owned housing units. Both of these are overseen by our Housing Programs Manager, Brenda Lopez. So I'm going to invite Brenda to come up and offer us an introduction to the various accomplishments that the Housing Authority has undertook so far.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Brenda Lopez, the Housing Programs Manager for the Oxnard Housing Authority. I manage and oversee the Section 8 applications, public housing, resident services, and maintenance departments. And today I will be providing a highlight of the Oxnard Housing Authority's outstanding achievements and milestones in the past year to year and a half. So first, I would like to start off with what I term as our report card, if you will. The Department of Housing and Urban Development has established a performance assessment system through which it measures the performance of public housing authorities to measure the performance of its major programs. In our case, as Emilio shared, we have two major programs. So we get an annual CMAP and FOS score. CMAP is the Section 8 Management Assessment Program score. It measures the success of our Section 8 program. Specifically, it is looking at our ability to effectively assist eligible families in securing decent units at a reasonable subsidized cost as determined by federal housing legislation. The FOS score, which is the Public Housing Assessment System, looks at the performance of public housing, and it is looking at our ability to manage federal funding awards and the program itself. The Oxnard Housing Authority has been designated a high performer in both areas. So we received a high performer in Section 8 and public housing. This means that our scores overall were at least 90% or higher. It speaks to the quality of the work of our staff, but it also gives us a competitive advantage for certain funding opportunities from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. As I'm sure we will all agree, quality is not the only important factor in performance, but quantity as well. So this past year, as I mentioned earlier, we have really focused on increasing our utilization, specifically expanding or increasing the number of families that are assisted through our existing programs. So some of these examples include the Housing Choice Voucher, again, better known as Section 8. In the past 9 months, we have admitted close to 130 new families. To give you a point of reference, in the prior 2 years, we had admitted less than 50 families. So we almost tripled the number of families assisted in half of the time. We also successfully completed the relocation of the Las Cortes second phase. Las Cortes is a multi-stage project through which, in the second phase, 144 new units were constructed. Our staff successfully relocated 144 former public housing residents into the new units, and this was completed at the beginning of last year. In addition to Las Cortes, we also revamped our efforts under the Homeless Preference Set-Aside Program. And for those of you who are not familiar, the Department of Housing and Urban Development gives flexibility to housing authorities to establish local preferences that help a housing authority meet its local unique community needs. And as long as the preferences obviously are protecting protected classes, we are able to successfully establish these preferences and help families as needed. In our case, or the Oxnard Housing Authority established a preference for homeless applicants or applicants who meet the homeless definition. We set aside a total of 15 vouchers per year to assist families who meet the definition of homelessness. Since its inception, we had only been able to successfully lease up 3 families. However, in the past 9 months, and after quite a bit of effort, we are happy to share that we have successfully leased up 27 families, and we currently have 18 families with vouchers in hand who are currently searching for a new place to call home. And then lastly, we also issued a total of 39 project-based vouchers to the Ormond Beach Villas project. This is a project that was developed by Many Mansions, brand new construction. The project is specifically designated for veterans and even subdivided to veterans who are chronically homeless, homeless with disabilities, or low to very low income. And the reason why I'm sharing the breakdown of the different housing units available for our veterans is that I had the pleasure of speaking with one of the residents that got an apartment designated for homeless and disabled veterans. And in this case, this resident resonates with me because he asked me a very peculiar question. His call came in mid-December of 2019 last year, and he asked me if I believed in Santa. And so at first I thought it was a joke or maybe a mystery shopper, but further into the conversation, the resident shared with me that he had asked me this question because he wanted to share how appreciative and grateful he was to have an apartment, that he couldn't even fathom the idea of making a Christmas wish. And this is why he had asked me the question. He further shared that he had fell in very difficult times during the prior year. He'd been homeless again for close to 12 months. And in his case, he said there were nights where he didn't know where he was going to sleep. There were days where he couldn't have a warm shower. There were days where he didn't have a warm meal. I believe this is not just a success story of one participant being assisted by our program, but rather it's a story that talks about our housing authority's impact, a lifelong impact that we've made for a veteran. And in this case, this veteran sustained his injuries, which rendered him permanently disabled when he was at war, fighting for the freedom that we get to enjoy today. So on that note, I would like to invite Emilio to come back to the podium to speak about our finance department. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. So the finance department is run by Rhonda Hodge. Unfortunately, the finance manager, Rhonda, was not able to be with us today, so I'm going to do my best to cover this slide. First of all, the Housing Authority budget is scheduled to be presented to the Board of Commissioners and City Council next week on Tuesday, June 30th. And amongst a myriad of improvements that we hope to undertake, need to demonstrate that the two housing authority primary programs include a structural deficit that we have to identify a plan on how to address. The deficit is not really our making, but a direct result of fluctuations from federal allocations when Congress appropriates funding to the Section 8 or to HUD. Right now, for example, they are only funding 80% of the budget need, and so that balance we have to fill in some way. And the way that we fill it is that in prior years, the fluctuation has led to surpluses. Those surpluses are restricted to fill this exact gap that is created by this fluctuation. But we do think that there is a way for us to address this uncertainty that is created by those allocations coming from Congress, and we can talk about that as we go forward. The public housing program is primarily funded by tenant rents, making up more than 70% of the program total income of approximately $6.3 million. But public housing revenue also includes an annual operating subsidy that comes from HUD, and that's approximately $750,000. Other income includes interest and investments, plus a management fee that we incur in running the administrative part of the public housing. Public housing program expenses include administration, utilities, maintenance, plus insurance, defined here as general expenses. Not reflected on this slide is the annual capital fund to the Oxnard Housing Authority of approximately $1.9 million, which is expressly reserved for making improvements to public housing units, and we'll talk about that in a few slides from now. The Housing Choice Voucher Program has a total program revenue of approximately $23.3 million, which is primarily made up of housing assistance payments for direct rental assistance and payments to private landlords. But it also includes approximately $2 million of administrative fee. The administrative fee is an operating subsidy that comes from HUD in order to operate the Section 8 program. Again, the primary expense is tenant-based rental assistance payments to private landlords. And we'll get into this in a little bit. Now I'd like to invite Ruby Mora to come and describe the applications units.
Hello, my name is Ruby Mora. I am a housing specialist in the Applications Division. The Applications Division currently manages 15 waiting lists for 3 different programs. We have the Housing Choice Voucher, Public Housing, and Project-Based Voucher Program. We also have vouchers set aside for homeless applicants under the Homeless Preference and for homeless veterans under the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program, known as VASH. We currently have over 9,000 active applications, and at this time, we are currently accepting new applications for the 3-bedroom waiting list for the public housing program. Applications are made available online via our housing department website, and anybody in the country can apply. This division is responsible for selecting, verifying preferences, and screening applicants for eligibility. So the eligibility stage entails running background checks, collecting information for all members, as well as making sure that the families do not exceed the income limit. Once a family is approved for assistance, depending on the program, they are either offered a unit or issued a voucher. Presently at this time, we have Efrain De Santos as a housing navigator working with landlords and assisting new voucher holders locate units. To give you a little more information regarding the Section 8 program, I would like to invite back Brenda Lopez, the program's manager. Thank you for your time.
Brenda Lopez, Housing Programs Manager. Patricia Sanchez, our Section 8 program supervisor, was not able to be here this afternoon, so I will be providing the Section 8 department overview on her behalf. The Section 8, or Housing Choice Voucher Program, is federally funded by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It provides rent subsidies or rent subsidy assistance to low to very low income families. The Section 8 program basically pays 70% of the monthly rent, and the program participant pays on average no more than 30% of their adjusted monthly gross income towards their rent. We currently have 1,686 program participants in the Section 8 program, and we pay a little bit over $21 million a year in housing assistance payments to landlords in the private market. One of the greatest advantages of this program is that it does offer program participants mobility. A program participant is able to look for a unit anywhere in our jurisdiction that best suits their needs. Once the applications division issues a voucher and a family is approved to be admitted into the program, the Section 8 department manages the case management or ongoing case management of the case file. So in this case, it will process changes in income, family composition, or if a family wishes to move. In order for a unit to be admitted into the program, it must pass a housing quality standard inspection, and it must do so every 2 years for the remaining of its participation in the program. In addition, the rent requested by a landlord must be approved by the Oxnard Housing Authority, and we're basically looking to ensure that it meets the established fair market rents by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The Housing Authority is constantly looking for ways in which we can recruit and find new landlords to participate in our program. Our goal is to ensure that our program participants have a wide variety or choice for them to locate a unit in a community that will ensure that they are successful and that they are able to really find something that meets their needs. And now I'm going to ask Jaime Arellano to come up and talk about the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jaime Arellano, Housing Specialist and Family Self-Sufficiency Coordinator. The Family Self-Sufficiency Program, better known as the FSS program, is a national voluntary program created by the Department of Housing and Urban Development for public housing and Section 8 families. Along with the rental assistance that the families already receive, FSS further assists these families to access resources and services in order to seek self-sufficiency. Program participants set goals based on their needs and must obtain employment and become free of welfare assistance within a 5-year term. The Oxnard Housing Authority partners with the Ventura Housing Authority and other community agencies to identify resources and refer families to services such as education, counseling, childcare, job training, credit repair, computer literacy, and financial literacy. The program also creates a savings account for participants to help build assets. Funds are taken directly to their increased rent payments and are placed in their savings account. For example, if a family's initial rent at the start of the program is $1,000, and during the program their rent increases to $1,300, the program will place $300 in their savings account each month. The family will receive all of their savings if they complete the program at the end of the 5-year term. FSS also helps with home ownership. FSS participants are not required to obtain home ownership or move out of housing at the end of the program, but we do promote and recommend home ownership by collaborating with home ownership counseling agencies. These agencies provide home ownership counseling, home buyer education workshops, down payment assistance, and first-time home buyer loan programs. One of our success stories pictured here is Yolanda Fulton. With guidance from the FSS program, Yolanda became free of welfare assistance. She obtained a BA degree, obtained her master's degree, repaired her credit, obtained a new job. She graduated from the FSS program and received an escrow check of $21,000. She received down payment assistance from the Ventura County Community Development Corporation and the City of Oxnard. She also purchased a home and became free of Section 8 assistance. Thank you. The next speaker is Jesus Andrade, Public Housing Supervisor.
Good afternoon. My name is Jesus Andrade, the Housing Program Supervisor. I will be providing a brief overview of the public housing program. The slides on the PowerPoint that you will be seeing are a current picture of each of the public housing sites. The Housing Authority of the City of Oxnard is responsible for the management and maintenance of 520 public housing units. The units range in size from studios to 5 bedrooms. The main functions of the public housing management staff are the following: lease vacant units to eligible low-income families, assure lease compliance, collect rent and other charges, perform annual reexaminations of families' income, perform interim reexaminations when family has a change in income or families terminate the lease and evict tenants when necessary. Lastly, maintain the units in a decent, safe, and sanitary condition. Generally, the tenant's rent is 30% of the monthly adjusted income. Higher income tenants have the option of the flat rent at their annual reexamination. Tenants that have extremely low income or suffer an income hardship have the option of the minimum rent. The public housing budget operates largely from tenants' rents and the Department of Housing and Urban Development operating subsidy. Up next is Emilio to describe maintenance and capital fund programs.
Actually, the Maintenance and Capital Improvements Unit is run by Freddy Contreras. Freddy, I'm sorry, was not able to be here today, so I'm going to pinch it for him a little bit. The Oxnard Housing Authority does own and operate 520 units of multifamily rental throughout Oxnard, owned by the Housing Authority, deemed to be public housing units. These units need to be actively managed and maintained to ensure a quality living environment for our public housing tenants. And with a staff of 16, the Maintenance and Capital Improvements team ensures regular maintenance, continuing repairs, and unit turnover. The team has also taken on the efforts to respond to COVID-19 sanitation. Additionally, recently the team merged with the Capital Fund, which is a unit that provides for improvements and investment into those public housing units. Previously, they were separate two units in the Housing Authority, so we merged them. The team has been providing a substantial benefit. It is a support service to public housing, and we are going to talk in a little bit about its effort to allow us to improve the stock of housing and the inventory of housing that would be owned and run by the Housing Authority. But first, I'd like to invite Rose Bañuelos to present the award-winning Resident Services Program.
Good afternoon. My name is Rose Bañuelos, and I am the Resident Services Coordinator for the Oxnard Housing Authority. My position has been grant-funded from the Department of Housing and Urban Development for the past 25 years. The overall goal of this grant is to provide programs and referrals which link our residents with services such as training and educational opportunities. My position plays an integral role between the relationship between public housing and our tenants. Resident Services also assists our families with domestic issues and refers out to several outside organizations so that these barriers do not stop our residents from advancing. Resident Services has several programs to assist our community and our tenants. We offer ESL, English as a Second Language, basic bilingual computer classes, intervention and prevention programs for youth, and congressional recognized mural project. Too many others to mention, but we have a lot of community partners. In case of the elderly and disabled residents, we link supportive services to enable them to remain in place. Resident Services also oversees the 4 different tenant associations that are located in 4 of our different housing areas. Resident Services also oversees the 1500 Camino del Sol building. This building facilitates multiple social services for our tenants, and this building was just awarded a national recognition from the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials for the innovative services available to our public housing tenants. Thank you, and I would like to introduce my coworker, Levy Ortiz.
Good afternoon. My name is Levy Ortiz, and I'm a housing specialist with the Housing Choice Voucher Program. With that presentation and review of our programs, we can see that we are a very good housing authority with a committed staff that makes all of those things possible for our community. So how do we begin to rethink and renew? What is the plan, and what are their next steps and actions? What needs to be completed or reviewed to propel our agency to the next level? Here are a few of those things. Review agency operations and customer service. Review our administrative plan and admissions and continued occupancy policies. Hold town hall meetings for landlords and owners. Attend resident committee meetings for input and engagement. Solicit council and community input. Hold public hearings. and finally amend the 5-year plan as necessary. Once we have held all of those collaborative meetings and discussions, then reviewed all of the ideas and data collected, where does that take us? It moves us to all of the possibilities, which is our next slide, and I will turn that slide over to our Housing Director, Emilio Ramirez.
Thank you, Leti. I should mention that Leti is in charge of the entire Rethink and Renew initiative, so she will be following up. Yes, the Oxnard Housing Authority is performing well, and it has been for quite some time, thanks in every respect to the quality staff that is serving our community, thanks in every respect to the Board of Commissioners and the City Council that is guiding our actions, to city management that is supporting our efforts. Over the years, the Oxnard Housing Authority has experienced a lot of success points, and I think that we need to acknowledge those success points because they offer us a lot of possibilities. It goes back quite a bit of time, from when Sal Gonzalez, former director of the department, started to envision the possibility of actually building and owning affordable housing. Starting a nonprofit, the previous director, Arturo Casillas, who actually launched the homeless preference, put it into our plan and made it be a reality. The staff that made it happen is here today, but those things were launched by prior administrations that at least saw a vision for the future. And we would like to expand that vision. We'd like to parlay the success of those previous administrations. We think that we can. We think that there is a significant amount of possibilities that are in front of us. A couple of things, more than a couple of things that we have to do. Number one, at the beginning, I mentioned a budget concern. It's not really our doing, but it is our problem to fix. We have to acknowledge it, and we have to work on how do we generate a value added for our community, for the housing authority, and for our budget. We have to improve customer service. We simply do. We are a public agency, yes, and admit a large bureaucracy, but that doesn't mean that we cannot engage in quality customer service that we would expect every private actor that is a landlord. We have to be in a better relationship with our landlord stakeholders and our tenant stakeholders. And not only that, but foster a better relationship between our landlord and our tenants, our participants. We do think that there is a lot of possibilities, and on screen are some of those ideas. And yes, they're only ideas at this point, and they're ideas because we need to brainstorm with stakeholders, with yourselves, with a lot of other stakeholders. But on screen, we are thinking about the possibility, how do we continue our effort that was successful in things that brought us projects like Terraza de las Cortes, and now is generating actual positive cash flow via developer fees. How do we move to an effort initiative by HUD? It's a demonstration, it's a trial called Moving to Work. Moving to Work is simply an effort that tests various efforts within the housing authority and provides flexibility in regulation, fungibility of funding sources. Can we do it in a way that can accomplish future stability to our tenants? Can we accomplish voucher diversity in a way that we can pursue other forms of vouchers that we don't yet have that HUD offers, i.e. mainstream vouchers? There are mainstream vouchers in the region, but none to the Oxnard Housing Authority, and we have demonstrated our ability to run a homeless preference voucher program, and mainstream is specifically to provide that opportunity. So we think we should pursue it. We think that there's a way for us to transition from public housing into affordable housing. That's called rental assistance demonstration. It's an idea that HUD put together because HUD and the rest of us believe that eventually public housing is going to come to an end, and we have to plan for that. Plus, it gives us a fungible source of funding that we can use to close gaps. There are a lot of things here, and we are seeking your advice, your participation, your brainstorm in an effort to make our housing authority better. We want to work hard. We have demonstrated that desire, and we want to expand and provide better service to the community that needs us. That is our presentation. The entire staff that is here are able to answer questions. Thank you to Levy again for spearheading the Rethink and Renew initiative, and we are happy to join and answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. It looks like we have no public speakers on this item. If we have no public speakers, then Mayor, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Committee Member Basua. I am impressed with what I've just seen, Mr. Chair and Committee Member Basua, and I have a lot of confidence in Mr. Ramirez's leadership and what he's been able to do, and I appreciate it's a sign of leadership when you're able to acknowledge the accomplishments also of others that laid a lot of this groundwork in our previous housing director, Arturo Casillas, and other predecessors. I would like to say that a lot of my focus has been on how public housing and even the voucher program, how it can serve as an agent for social change. And one of the slides in the very beginning, Mr. Chair and Committee Member Basua, that was shown, it was speaking to and referring to social change. And I think what's going on in this country right now, what's happening even in this city right now, has a lot to do with social change and advocacy for progress when it comes to social change. And I've asked the community, and I know other council members have, to start this conversation. And I think it's interesting to try to connect the dots to say, you know, if as a part of our conversation, we're looking to implement social change in the city of Oxnard, to what extent can we implement social change with what we directly control, which is this housing department? And I really appreciate these possibilities, and maybe if I could have the slide go back to those possibilities, and I just wanted to make a few comments about that, please. You know, there are a lot of people to thank, but I know that the housing director referred to Levy as presiding over this these possibilities, and to me, the reason why I'm in government is about possibilities. I think politics is about possibilities, and public service is about possibilities. And to me, this is, when I see this word possibilities, it excites me. It makes me so excited to be serving and in this position. And I really would like to see the council, when this comes to the full city council, I'd like for the city council, Mr. Ramirez and members of the committee, to focus on these possibilities and trying to form a consensus, or the possibility of forming a consensus and doing exactly here what I just said in the previous presentation about the downtown, is giving some very specific direction to the director and to Levy and to members of the housing department and to the city manager. What do we want to see of these possibilities? What are we most focused on as a priority? And I will say, Mr. Chair and Committee Member Basua, what I'm most interested in is I want to see social change. I think that social change comes about. I mean, there's a lot of agents of social change, and I'm kind of taking off here, and I want to make sure I stay really focused. But you know, capitalism is one of those social changes. Education presents social change or possibilities as a vehicle for social change. But I see this moving to work as an example. And Mr. Ramirez was referring to, HUD even sees maybe that public housing will go away. I've long thought about whether or not our housing stock, which I think is around 342 different places that we have right now, the public housing, whether that shouldn't be transferred at some point to a nonprofit. Could nonprofits deliver the services to these residents and to others on an equal, if not a better level than maybe government? But I'll just end by saying I am most concerned about moving to work. And I'm most concerned about whether it's the Section 8 voucher program. Mr. Ramirez, is it 1,800 Section 8 vouchers that we have in the city of Oxnard?
1840.
1840. So we have 1,840 Section 8 vouchers. One of the reasons why I'm an advocate, Mr. Chair and Committee Member Basua, of project-based vouchers is I see that project-based vouchers and the kind of social change work that is inherent, I think, with, well, we're seeing tonight with public housing, but also with nonprofits, that I'm really focused on that. We got to move people, and we got to move people and lead people in the right direction. And so I'd like to know more about Mr. Ramirez about moving to work. It is my focus, just as one member of this committee and one member of the city council, because I'm intent on, in the short time I have left on this earth, which is probably more of a Councilman Perillo remark he made not long ago, how are we going to produce social change? And I think, Mr. Chair and Committee Member Basua, moving people to work is one of those avenues that we're going to get there. So thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Councilwoman Basua.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm sure you're all aware that I'm pretty versed in this area. But first, I'd like to thank Mr. Ramirez, because I did have some questions, but it was they were answered within the presentation. And I apologize again, because Mr. Ramirez, I thought the city of Oxnard, had homeless voucher set aside. And it appears it doesn't. It appears that you have an allocation of vouchers, and within your admin plan, there's been a decision that there was going to be so many vouchers set aside every year for this preference. Am I correct?
The administrative plan created a preference that set aside 15 vouchers per year for Oxnard residents that are homeless.
Okay, so every year we're adding an additional 15 vouchers.
That's correct. Or we're setting aside 15 vouchers.
Right. So eventually, even, maybe I'll still be alive. Not sure about, Mayor Flynn, but he eventually, if we continue to add 15, 15, 15, 15, we're going to get up to our 1,800 allocation that we have for vouchers. And I'm just thinking, I think it's a great idea, but I'm thinking there might be a way within your admin plan to rewrite that in order to completely give you a preference for homelessness, make it a little bit more stringent, but still allow that allocation to always be there, if that makes any sense to you.
It doesn't make sense. And in fact, what we think that we would like to do, number one, having demonstrated the staff's ability to lease up, not entirely, but at least use almost 50 vouchers within the 1 year, what we would like to do is apply for a special allocation of mainstream vouchers, which would be in addition to, and use those mainstream vouchers for the homeless program that we've proven to be successful.
Correct. And, and of course, those mainstream vouchers are dedicated to people with disabilities. And, the intent is to have support services attached to those mainstream vouchers. That would be great if that can happen. But, I know the annual plan has already been submitted, and you've done the 5-year. But maybe, you know, moving forward for next year, that preference can be worded in a way that benefits both the agency and the community, in a way where you'll never have to change it again and your preference will always be there. Instead of continuing to just do the 15, 15, 15. So that's one of my comments. And then, you know, just kind of touching on the moving to work HUD module. It's, as you know, it's nothing, you know, that we do with HUD is simple. You know, if you spell HUD backwards, you know, we have a joke that it's called duh. But it's really hard, those moving to work, you know, programs are, you know, it's been around for a very long time, and the success rate nationwide is very low. And as we move forward, I would hope that, you know, we're able to make those numbers, you know, be a little bit more successful. I mean, and it's nationwide, it's just not one housing authority. And also moving on to the future, I'm not sure if the agency has been contacted by HUD and has been put on the radar for conversion, but I know that that is coming within California. So that's actually moving to that platform will allow the housing authority to generate more money and to be sure that years to come, the housing authority will have enough money for their need assessments. The neat thing about moving to another platform is that the inspections go away, the REAC inspections that we all hate go away. So just some food for thought there. And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I agree with both of my colleagues. This sounds very, very exciting, and I do know that, you know, it is a tough task that is put in front of the housing authority. It's the housing authority does the best that they can with what it is that they have. And on the moving forward aspect, you know, there's many things. We focused on move to work, we focused on other aspects. The key thing though, at the end of the day, like, you know, residents of these units are more than a number. You can never really count them as just a number. You know, there are people behind those numbers. So, you know, as with anything, you know, I think the customer service is essential to whatever it is that we do. Either we stay same program or we make a complete 180. At the end of the day, you know, we are serving a humongous need. As with anything, this doesn't even have to do with housing, but, you know, if, you know, we were to get like, you know, 100 volunteers to help out the youth to hopefully, you know, escape poverty, those 100 youth that are going to be being helped, they'll be able to tell like in 5 minutes if, you know, if the person's genuinely doing it for the right reasons or if it's just going to be like a resume builder. So at the end of the day, you know, we need to do something for the residents. And yes, I completely understand where Councilwoman Basu is coming from with the moving to work. If we go in that direction, the numbers at the top, at the beginning may not necessarily be there, what we expect, but, you know, we need to ride the course. And that's something that we need to do as a city. It's something we all need to understand, especially all of us on city council, that, you know, this is more than just numbers. You know, this is people who are struggling for a variety of reasons. And, you know, it's something that, you know, I think working for the housing authority is a calling. It's a calling that you not only are doing it for a paycheck, but that you are doing it for the betterment of others. You're putting the community ahead of sometimes of your own personal needs. And that's something that I've seen with a lot of the housing authority employees. You know, they go above and beyond their everyday jobs. And it's not necessarily to get a raise or to make themselves look good, it's to help out residents in the community, and that's something that's very admirable on their behalf. So with that, that would be it. Thank you very much. Does there need to, yes.
Oh, yeah, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make one comment.
Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree. I really like the remarks, your remarks, and Committee Member Busua, and also having her on this committee with her level of experience is really helpful. I think you know, again, some of the most challenging, you know, parts of housing is producing scenarios that can be considered along the path of social change, and it is really difficult. And we all know from whatever jobs. I mean, the chair is a teacher. I've been a teacher. Committee member Basua is in the housing department at Port Hueneme, and so all of us know that it is really a challenge. But I think it's important. People are not just numbers, but I think it's important that if we are intent on, if our conversation leads to social change, and what we in particular have in our jurisdiction to implement that social change, then I think we should, you know, set some goals and be realistic about it. And I would just extend this particular comment to the chair, Madrigal, is that rather than maybe us debate how long it takes for a person to emerge from poverty, that we still just the same say we're going to set everybody that comes within our influence on a path for whether it's self-sufficiency. This miracle story of this woman who was on public assistance, and then, you know, she gets all the way to a master's degree. That is just a miracle, you know, un milagro. It's amazing. And I think just if we're committed to that, which I would believe that all of us would be, I think setting some specific goals and some specific numbers to say, you know something, last year we were able to have 10 of these miracles, or one miracle, 2 miracles, whatever those are. And next year we're going to double that, or next year we're going to just, you know, because we want to be intent on social change as an example, just as one example. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Does there need to be a motion, or is it just receive and file, or
It is a receive and file, yes.
Okay, to receive and file. Okay, well, thank you very much, Emilio and the entire housing team for for the presentation. Thank you very much. Very informative on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, and with that, we are moving on to the next item, which is item E, items for future agendas. Is there anything for a future agenda?
Mr. Chair, I've suggested in 2 other committees, one, the Finance and Governance Committee, and also in Public Works, that in 2 weeks before we go on recess, that we take a look at the requested list, you know, the items for future agenda items. Some of those might not any longer be as relevant as they were when they were suggested, and maybe we can help the staff and the agenda setting process to take another look at those to determine if they're still relevant and what we'd like to see prioritized perhaps after the recess is over.
Okay, sounds good, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I have nothing for future agendas. If that is it, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.